All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're exploring a 5,000-year epic of god-kings, unimaginable wealth, and ultimate conquest. We are unpacking the story of one of the most magnificent and, frankly, terrifying empires in human history. It's a wild ride of absolute power, architectural miracles, and ultimately the kind of monumental hubris that leads to total, catastrophic collapse. So, your story actually kicks off right in the middle of the action with a really fascinating prophecy made by Prophet Muhammad. This was about the eventual Islamic conquest of Egypt. Long before his followers ever even reached the borders of this ancient superpower, he clearly told them that they would in fact conquer it. But the absolutely crucial instruction he left them was one of compassion. He basically said, when you succeed, you have to treat the common people of Egypt with goodness because you share a kinship with them.
But, victory is rarely ever that simple, right? Shortly after crushing the Roman and Persian empires, the army of Caliph Umar bin Khattab ran into an entirely unexpected enemy. A devastating plague just swept through the region. It completely halted their unstoppable expansion and tragically claimed the lives of their top generals. This forced a massive shakeup in leadership. Umar bin Khattab appointed Amr bin Alas as the new army chief, a decision that stabilized the ranks and got their sights locked right back onto the ultimate prize, Egypt.
Now, to truly wrap our heads around why Egypt was the ultimate prize for this 7th century army, and why it was considered one of the richest lands on planet Earth, we actually need to hit the rewind button. We have to flash back 5,000 years to the banks of the Nile River. Because in the ancient world, the equation for global dominance was incredibly simple. Water equaled power.
Controlling the world's largest river meant you held all the cards. People naturally flocked to the Nile from all over, making it the wealthiest region on the map. And out of all this prosperity, a leader named King Narmer steps up. He uses the Nile's dominance to unite the entire region and create the world's very first true kingdom. Now, what's absolutely mind-blowing here is that the foundational proof of this massive, unified empire and its first king comes down to just 2 ancient stone tablets. That's it. These are the oldest Egyptian writings ever discovered, and they clearly depict King Narmer, the guy who started the whole shebang.
Fast forward 1,000 years, and Egypt is an unchallenged global superpower. But something happens to the psychology of its rulers. They didn't just want to be kings anymore. They literally declared themselves to be living gods on earth. They introduced this completely new religious system that was strictly designed to squash any chance of a civilian rebellion. And honestly, it was terrifyingly effective. The common people were heavily indoctrinated to believe they could only ever hope to enter heaven if they remained the Pharaoh's absolute unquestioning slaves.
So, here's the catch with claiming to be a god. To remain a god forever, your physical body has to survive eternally. The belief was that a pharaoh only kept his divine status if his body stayed perfectly intact until the end of time. And this sparked a massive arms race of preservation, which gave us the highly precise and honestly incredibly gruesome 40-day invention of mummification. Surgeons would literally extract the brain out through the nose using a specialized hook. They drain the blood, remove the internal organs, and then soak the empty body in special salt water for 40 days. After that, they stuffed it with sand to keep its shape, coated it in oils and honey, and wrapped it all up in those iconic white bandages. Because they were so obsessed with immortality, these mummies obviously weren't just tossed into the dirt. They were sealed in breathtakingly expensive coffins, packed with literally everything a god might need for the afterlife. We're talking vast amounts of gold, heaps of food and drinks, and most importantly, the pharaoh's carefully preserved heart, safely kept in a dedicated jar right beside the body. And this race for immortality didn't stop at mummies. It quickly escalated to building massive, towering tombs. To really grasp the sheer scale of this ambition, let's compare the Great Pyramid of Khufu to today's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa. Khufu's pyramid held the title of the world's tallest building for a staggering 3,500 years. But height is just one piece of the puzzle. While the Burj Khalifa was taller, if you look at the actual mass, the Great Pyramid weighs more than 12 Burj Khalifas combined. That is just staggering. To truly understand the unbelievable hubris of these god-kings, just think about the number 2,000. The Great Pyramid is so overwhelmingly huge inside that you could easily park 2,000 large commercial trucks within its base. Just think about that for a second. All of this material, all of this backbreaking labor, all of this engineering genius, just to house a single dead body so one man could pretend to be an eternal god.
Which brings up a pretty massive question. What actually happens when building your own tomb bankrupts your entire empire? Because constructing these colossal, unprecedented monuments completely drained Egypt's immense wealth. The pharaohs were so blinded by their obsession that they ignored economic reality, and it brought the world's greatest superpower right to the brink of total economic collapse.
In fact, the pyramids that were built after Khufu's steadily shrank in size simply because the empire was running out of cash.
And right at this critical turning point, when it looked like Egypt was going to lose its superpower status for good, a really fascinating historical intervention happens. A young, remarkably beautiful boy is sold into slavery in an Egyptian market. This boy was Prophet Yusuf. Adopted by a powerful minister, he eventually beats all the odds and rises through the ranks to become the prime minister of Egypt. Working directly alongside the ruler, he brilliantly restructured the failing economy and miraculously saved the empire from going under.
Following Prophet Yusuf's massive success, his family, the Bani Israel, settled down peacefully in Egypt, eventually becoming some of its most prominent citizens. But eras change. A new pharaoh eventually seizes power, wipes out the old ruling family, and establishes a brutal new regime. Now, interestingly, the source texts we're exploring draw a direct, neutral parallel between this ancient pharaoh's strict ban on foreigners and modern immigration policies, specifically citing those proposed by Donald Trump. Historically speaking, what this meant for the Bani Israel was the start of an absolute nightmare. The new regime stripped them of their businesses and plunged them into a severe, brutal slavery that would last for 400 agonizing years.
Throughout those 4 centuries of suffering, the enslaved people held on to a singular hope that a prophet would eventually come to free them. Then, one day, an astrologer approaches the tyrannical pharaoh with a chilling warning. He tells him that a boy is about to be born from the Bani Israel who will single-handedly destroy his 3,000-year-old empire. Well, this prophecy absolutely terrified the pharaoh, and it prompted a horrifying decree. He literally ordered his soldiers to go door to door and execute every single newborn boy from the Bani Israel tribe.
But man, history has an incredible sense of irony, doesn't it? In this profound twist of fate detailed in the source texts, the very infant the pharaoh was frantically trying to destroy, Prophet Musa, slipped right through his fingers. And it's actually way more poetic than that. Prophet Musa was unknowingly adopted by the pharaoh's own family and raised right there inside the palace. He was literally eating at the table of the man who was trying to kill him.
When Prophet Musa grew up and realized his calling, he confronted the Pharaoh head-on. He presented his demands to free his people and demonstrated some profound miracles. Eventually, the pressure just became too much, and the Pharaoh yielded. In a single historic night, Prophet Musa secured the release of 600,000 Israelites. They immediately fled Egypt, leaving behind 400 years of bondage and headed toward Palestine.
But as you might guess, a god-king's ego does not handle defeat very well. The pharaoh of that era, Ramses, completely broke his promise. Driven by pure arrogance and rage, he mobilized his entire massive army and chased after the fleeing Israelites. According to the source, just as he was about to slaughter them, divine intervention saved Musa and his people, while Ramses and his entire formidable military force drowned in the sea. In those turbulent waters, the 3,000-year golden era of Egypt came to a sudden, catastrophic end. It proved to the entire world that these so-called gods were, in the end, just mortal men.
Now there's a really fascinating split in the historical record right here. The story of Musa and the drowning of Ramses actually isn't found in official Egyptian historical tablets. Which makes sense, empires rarely carve their most humiliating defeats into stone for everyone to see. But it is famously recorded in the Bible and the Quran. And the one thing that every historian universally agrees upon is the aftermath. After the reign of Ramses, Egypt permanently lost its footing. It never ever regained its status as the world's supreme superpower.
If we map this out on a timeline, we see history begin to come full circle. Following Ramses, Egypt entered its dark ages. Global power shifted entirely away, notably landing with Prophet Suleiman in Palestine. As Egypt just continued to weaken over the centuries, it became a sitting duck. It was conquered by Alexander the Great, and then it fell under the iron grip of the Roman Empire for 600 long years. And that massive historical detour lands us exactly back where we started this explainer, at the gates of Egypt in the 7th century CE, with Caliph Umar bin Khattab's Islamic army standing ready to fulfill that very first prophecy.
We've traced this incredible journey, all the way from King Narmer uniting the Nile, to pharaohs building literal mountains of stone just to live forever, to a sudden, crushing collapse, drowning in a sea of their own hubris. And looking at all of this, it really forces us to wonder, if a 3,000-year empire built by self-proclaimed gods can simply vanish into the sands of time, completely erased by their own arrogance, just how fragile is the ultimate power that so many chase today?